Okay, it's time again for Drummer Nation Live, the show for and about drummers where we talk about all things drum related. Hey, what's the deal with electronic drums? And why do so many drummers hate them? I don't. Today I have a special guest, the E-drum guru himself, Mike Snyder, and we'll talk about introducing you to the concepts here and the way this thing all works, and maybe there's some cool stuff you're not aware of about electronic drums. Coming up live right now on Drummer Nation. It's time for Drummer Nation. Here's your chance to win some bronze from Istanbul Mehmet, the original handmade cymbals from Turkey. The prize includes 3 shiny black bell cymbals, a giant ride, a powerful crash, and oversized hi-hats. The black bell line features 2 sonic personalities in one cymbal. It's a punchy pairing. Check the link in the show notes for your chance to win.
Hello everyone, my name is David Victor. I'm General Manager with the Craviato Drum Company. We wanted to offer a one-ply, solid shell product, but we wanted it to stay true to our mission of offering handmade drums of uncompromised quality built here in the USA. So take a listen to our Center Stage Series drum set.
Memphis Drum Shop is the world's premier provider of percussion instruments. With 6 showrooms of gear, mycymbal.com, the Memphis Gong Chamber, and a first-rate repair department, turn to Memphis Drum Shop for all your percussion needs. Okay, you know, it's uncanny that every week, I don't need these, just before I go in the air, something crazy happens. Today my dog got out, jumped out of the screen window on the porch chasing a cat, and we dispatch automobiles and go all around looking for her. We get back and there she's standing in the garage looking like, what's the matter with y'all guys? What's the matter with you guys? She's a Southern dog. What's the matter with y'all? Anyway, I'm a little out of breath from chasing my dog. All right, so what's happening in the world? Still stay at home, COVID protection. Now we've got riots on top of that. So people watching this later on, we're not going to dwell on that here. This is a fun show about drums. Along those lines, though, I do want to talk about electronic drumming, and I don't get why people don't get them. I happen to have a very cool one. Well, you see a drum set behind me. I always do this the wrong way. Behind me is a Yamaha electronic kit, and here's another cool thing I have. That's called a Zen drum, and that is an virtuoso artist instrument. Not in my hands, but I'm having fun learning how to play it, and I'm planning a show pretty soon about it. Hey, big changes here. If you notice, the mic's on the other side. That way I'm free to switch with this hand because I have a big thing in front of me that does all the switching you're seeing. Okay, a few things. I've got some shows coming up. The Duca da Fonseca is on the Drummer Nation podcast, and I have one coming up with these 2 crazies. Kathy Rich, Buddy's daughter, and Greg Potter. They are, between the 2 of them, a barrel of laughs. Another one coming up with John Mahon from Elton John's band. He's the percussionist, and Phil Hood was my co-pilot on that one. So you don't want to miss that. That's coming up. Let's get those names off of there. Oh, losing my light. Anyway, the other thing I want to mention, and please take heed of this, is Patreon, okay? I can use your support. A lot of people help me out just a little bit. So there's where you go and help me with that. If not that, you can always go to drummernation.com and please sign up for our e-list. In addition to that, please like, subscribe, favorite, hit forward, share, whatever it is, and help us get this thing rolling. It's growing a lot, I'm happy to say, in no small part due to the great guest I've been able to have on. So on my live show, I like to do sometimes what I call almost live, meaning I hate to have a remote guest on live because if it screws up, and it can, anybody watching the news channels these days, now that they're on the internet like everybody else with with remote guests, you can see what happens. If it's happening to them, it's going to happen to me. So I like to pre-record the segments with the guest, and I did this the other day with my buddy Mike Snyder. I say E-Drum Guru, he actually is, and has books to that effect, and he has a show where we're kind of on hiatus with his show, E-Drum Guru, until we get this whole thing sorted out with, nobody wants to advertise on anything right now because of the state of affairs with retail. But nevertheless, he was gracious enough to do my show. So here's my interview with Mike Snyder talking about all kinds of things related to electronic drumming from one of the experts. I think you're going to dig it, and it might change some ideas you have about electronic drumming. So here's Mike. Hey, Mike Snyder, thanks for doing the show again on short notice as well. How you been, buddy?
I've been all right. Probably the same as everybody. At home, not going to the store very much, and not seeing friends, and of course, the gig scene though has been not so much.
Yeah, you hear about the guy that had a gig last week? Yeah,
no,
me neither.
That was my career.
Yeah, right.
What used to be known as my career.
All those people who said I'd never work again, they're finally right.
Yeah, my ex-wife told me.
Yeah, right. Now my mother-in-law is no longer surprised that I can make a living. Hey, let's get to... I know. It's a good time, though, for maybe some surgery you've been putting off.
Yeah, interesting thing. About 12 years ago, I had carpal tunnel release surgery done in my left hand, and it was like magical, right? I remember waking up and kind of going, oh, doggone, I can move it. It doesn't hurt, right? And I've been putting off for a couple of years having my right hand done, and I've been doing a lot of work with my hands since I've been home and doing stuff around the house like everybody, buy Home Depot stock and Zoom stock apparently.
That's right.
So I had carpal tunnel release on my right hand about this coming Thursday will be 2 weeks. So I'm about 9 days out. Yeah, I know, right?
No, we're not suicide attemptees.
No,
this is real surgery.
It's real surgery, and it's a back to life for drummers, and it's not the repetitive motion; it's the gripping, right? It's the gripping.
Exactly. I asked the doctor, "What am I doing anything wrong?" He says, "No, you're 63. You've been playing drums for 40-something years. That's what happens."
And your technique is great, and I have really relaxed technique.
That's what I said. I said I don't have I never had blazing technique, but I've been a teacher. I had great teachers myself. There's nothing wrong with what I do, and that's what he said. Caught up with you.
Yeah. The point is, it's like, because I'll be, I'll be 60 next week. I know. I know. Yeah. And it just. You gotta fix stuff. It's just like a car with a lot of miles on it, Yeah. Stuff's got to go into the garage sometimes.
Well, it looks like it came out pretty well, and you're doing right.
Yeah. I'm happy.
If they can do it like you and I have had done, it's not that big a deal. Some people have to cut your whole hand open and all, but if you get through it this way, endoscopically with minimal invasion, it's not very painful, and recovery is pretty easy.
Yeah, nobody should be scared of it. I mean, right. I've actually already been playing. I played drums a little bit at 8 days.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I play every day now, and still can't save me, but I am who I am.
Right.
I said, when this is over, will I be able to play piano? He said, sure. I said, well, I never could before. Okay, so the topic of the day, and you one of the foremost experts in the world, is e-drumming. And specifically, I want to talk about some things like why it hasn't taken off more than it has, some of the stereotypes people have. First of all, a lot of drummers are what they call midiots, right? We're all afraid of MIDI. MIDI came about. What does MIDI mean?
MIDI is an acronym for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And it was released, I believe, in 1983.
Yeah.
And it was a collaboration between Dave from, was his not Sequential Circuits? Dave Smith.
You know all the guys. Yeah, I don't know this guy.
Yeah, Dave Smith and Ikitaro Takahashi, who founded A-Stone and then Roland and then ATV. And those guys changed the way we make music.
Right.
Every way.
But essentially what it is it's a system of one controller determining what sounds come out, right? And it could be any instrument. I'm going to pick something up here.
Yeah, it's the universal translator. Prior to MIDI, there were all these protocols. Every manufacturer had like a protocol for talking to another instrument, right? And so what this is, it was like the Tower of Babel, to use a metaphor. And MIDI brought it all together. It didn't matter what manufacturer, as long as it was to the MIDI standard, MIDI Spec 1.0 at the time, and 2.0 now, right?
Right.
And that you could talk to it. It wasn't a problem. And it just cleared up all these kind of complex Rube Goldberg patches and interfaces and stuff you needed to talk to one another.
But at the heart of it is very simple, right? It's just it's telling
really
another instrument, start the note this way, hold the note this way, at this velocity, which is volume, end the note this way. Or it could be a series of instructions about starting a loop or something. But the point is, any controller can access those sounds and make sounds. Here's a toy, for example, iRig.
Yeah.
And people, I like to use the term tabula rasa. Remember that term, which means an empty slate, right? These are pads that can be sent with MIDI messages to a sound module where things are recorded and sampled, we say, and doesn't really matter what the controller is, except for how much finesse and nuance and all that stuff you want.
Right. And I can look around the room and I've got, there's a Malacat I have as a controller, right, for mallet instruments, and I use my Malacat in the studio a lot instead of playing a marimba or a vibraphone or a xylophone, because the samples I have of marimba, and it's pretty easy to get a great marimba sound, they're in tune.
Right. And they all fit. Right, and they all fit. And you can't put a 5-octave marimba in the pit.
No.
So let's talk about that. So you have a MIDI controller, and for drummers, skipping the stuff in the 80s, right now, generally a drummer looks at an electronic kit, like I have back there.
Right? Yamaha kit,
Yeah, that's a Yamaha kit. A lot of brands make them. And what people may not realize is that those pads are the controllers. Just like the thing I showed them, or it could be a keyboard. Those are the controllers. And when you hit those, they're set up to access sounds. This is behind me, so you can't see it. The module is behind me.
Yeah.
And that's where the sounds are.
That's the brains.
The brain, okay, but really it's the thing that translates what you're playing to the sound to spit it out as either MIDI data or audio. Okay, why do drummers hate them?
Well, I've been playing electronic drums from almost the beginning. Right, my first kit was 1984. It was Simmons. It was a Dave Simmons SDS 9 at the time. It was kind of a hybrid, had a sampling section, very rudimentary sampling section because of the era, and some analog sounds. Hard pads, like playing a countertop, and with a little bit of rubber on them.
Right.
And back then, you had to adjust the way you played, from your acoustics to your electronics. In fact, you really just had to dumb down your playing like crazy, because they weren't very expressive. They didn't have a wide dynamic range. They didn't have a wide palette of sounds. They definitely weren't acoustic drums. They didn't have the color of acoustic drums. I guess the palette of color.
And it hurt your hands to play, let's not forget.
Well, yeah, did I mention I had? No, I'm just kidding. And they got it back. In fact, there were no cymbals. 1984, it was just drums. And Simmons drums, right? A couple other companies made them. Tama was in the business. Pearl was in the business. Actually had a pretty cool setup. There were earlier things, like there was some snare from Star Musical Instruments.
But
and then there were Sin drums.
Right, but they were expensive.
Expensive as hell.
And not very musical and hard to use.
Yeah, aside from that, awesome.
Right, and then once you bought in, 6 months later, that one was done, and you had to do it again.
Yeah,
so you were in at the early age where you were getting paid to play them in the studios in L.A. I was in L.A. at the time and steered away from it because I didn't understand it. I wasn't getting any of that kind of work, and I was working on bebop with Hamilton, you know,
Right.
different direction. But it's come full circle now, man, to where you can buy a kit that. Okay, so before we do that, drummers
Yeah.
go into a store, let's say middle-aged drummers who don't know what this stuff is and have been predisposed to dislike it. They go into a store, a drum shop, oftentimes the drum shop doesn't like them either.
Yeah, I see that a lot. I've been in a lot of stores, you know, over the last 35 years of selling some sort of electronic drum stuff. And yeah.
Okay, so
some stores, yes.
some stores are hip. Some stores are like, well, you don't want that, kid. You know, and a lot of parents are just buying it because it's quiet.
Right.
That's it. It's quiet, put it in the corner, leave Johnny alone. In 6 months, he'll be on something else, and we'll sell this stuff and buy some baseball gear. So guy walks into a store, the store doesn't dig him. Then he goes to play it, and it's awkwardly set up in some weird, you know how if a pro doesn't set up a kit, if a pro sets up a kit, almost anybody can play it.
Right.
If they don't, nobody can play it. So you sit down at this kit, and it's all awkward and screwed up, and it's going through some cheap, cheesy bullshit amplifier that sounds like hell.
Or $10 headphones.
Or $10 headphones, and it's got a bunch of sounds punched up that nobody would use in a lifetime.
Right.
So they walk out of the store going, man, that sucks.
Yeah.
Now, to the initiated, let's move it forward a little bit.
Yeah, you know, things changed in '97 when Roland came out with the mesh head and V drums, right? The TD10. Back then, I just sold a company, Trigger Perfect Drum Triggers, that made drum triggers, and Roland called and asked if I'd like to do clinics, right? And it's like, yeah, sure. You know, I mean, I love talking about electronics, and I love the technology, and I love, you know, I'm a percussionist. I'm a classically trained percussionist. Studied at USC with Kenny Watson and Dale Anderson, bunch of great studio players, and studied with Charles Dowd at the University of Oregon, who taught me a lot about sound and how to get sound out of a drum. And I really love sound. Right? I love the sound palette, and that's the beautiful thing about the electronics. And my goal has always been for them to eventually, while I'm still alive, be like playing acoustic drums with as much of that subtlety. You know, like you want to play acoustic drums. I remember first time you probably sat down, you went, "Oh man, acoustic drums. This is me." Right?
Within seconds.
Yeah, right. And we've all experienced that. And even me, having made my living as an electronic drum, you know, clinician and talking about it and being a guru, I love playing acoustic drums. You know, I've got almost a dozen acoustic drum sets, and you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of snare drums, and of course, you know, the brass thing is an addiction too. But I love sound now. There are drums out there and sound modules and software programs where I want to sit down and play my electronic drums. And for a lot of different reasons.
Now, a big difference is, first of all, the controllers are way better. Secondly, you make some mental adjustments in that you don't play it just, you know, like a piano player doesn't play an organ the same way he plays a piano.
Right. Exactly.
Or a synthesizer or whatever. And you can argue that the music you play will be different based on the instruments you play it on.
Absolutely.
But respecting it as an instrument, that's not the same thing as a snare drum, but maybe it does things a snare drum can't do as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of things.
Yeah,
opening your mind just a little bit to open up for that.
Well, you know, let's take what's happening right now. I mean, you know, we've been in kind of quarantine or lockdown or whatever here in where I live in Portland, Oregon, since for how much 2.5 months.
Right.
You know, and I know that the home recording market for sales of musical instruments has gone bananas, right? That's like everything else has fallen off the face of the earth, but if you're selling home recording equipment. But let's face it, to get an acoustic drum sound, you know, you're dealing with 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 microphones and great preamps. And it's a lot of money and a lot of experience. You don't just throw up the mics and they sound good.
Right.
And
if you don't have a room, if you have a room like this, if you have a room like mine, forget it, right?
Yeah,
I can't get those sounds there.
And I've always thought and I think a lot because of my percussion background, I've thought about, I'm always looking at things like, a drum to me is like a hammer, right? It's just like, I kind of don't care what brand the hammer is or what the hammer is made of. It could be a hammer I found. It may be the best hammer I've ever played, or it may just be the right hammer for that gig or for that sound or that recording or whatever. With electronics, I have all that at my disposal in a bedroom.
Right. See, I did the theme song to the show. Kevin, my son, wrote it. We did it on the dining room table, man. I played a Zen drum. He played his guitar through an iPad, with their sound, same kind of thing, only with that. And in a half an hour, we did it. I couldn't come close to getting those sounds in here. And even if I had the $2,000 a channel preamps and all the high-end stuff and the Neumann mics and all that, I still got a shitty room to deal with, which is really what you're supposed to start with, is a good room.
Good room. I mean,
right?
I'm funny because I short aside, I have a couple of recordings on a couple of records in the last 15 years where we had the luxury of doing like one tune a day. So we bring in the right drums for that. It wasn't setting up a kit, micing it, and doing 10 tracks, right? He was like, oh, this is the flavor of this tune, so we're bringing this and try this miking technique. One of the coolest drum sounds I ever got was with 3 microphones. Yeah, but a Google crushing room. Yeah.
Yeah, and somebody really knows what they're doing on the other side.
Yeah, then there's that. Yeah.
You can look at, they say, well, Michael Jackson used a Shure SM7. But, or what is it called? It's called that, right?
SM7, yeah.
Yeah, SM7. But that doesn't mean that I can plug it in and get that sound.
No.
Aside from the vocals,
Michael Jackson.
Yeah, no, I mean, aside from how well he sang it, it was Quincy on the other side, too,
Exactly.
And a great studio and all that. Like, it ain't just buy this, kid, and you'll sound like that, Yeah. Okay, so one of the big problems in the whole electronic drum thing has been cymbals. As you said, they started out without cymbals. Then the cymbals came along, and they truly sucked. Now, yeah. So what's happening now with cymbals?
Well, we're seeing starting really in earnest about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you started to see electronic drums that looked in a proportion like acoustic drums. I was involved with ATD, and those drums kind of set the tone for what's happening now with companies like Roland and Drum Tech and all these other companies. And there's something to not just the sound, which has got the sound of modules and triggering has progressed really well. But there's something to like the look and feel of drums. Like I remember I did this thing when we were showing the 85 module for ATV, and we didn't have drums, and so I set up our DW kit with like on head Aquarian triggers, FSR triggers, and a mesh head, and external drum triggers, stick and snare, and some Roland Yamaha crashes and stuff. And same drum set, same modules, same sounds on like a Roland GD20 mesh kit, Yamaha kit like you're sitting on back there, and as well as then this DW acoustic drum set with these pads and triggers. And the players that came through, like, well, there was students like Indy Gordy and Marvin St. Smith and guys like that. Every one of them stopped and goes, yeah, man, the DW drums sound better. Sound better. Same system, same sound, same everything. It's that perception of hitting something that we're comfortable with.
They were comfortable with it, and it felt the right way. I know when I had my cymbal company, I'd pick out cymbals for guys. We would talk about how does the stick feel? Does it catch the stick? How does the stick feel on the cymbal? You can't really do that for somebody else. I could get you close with what you wanted orally, but not, the stick catching the cymbal is something you got to do.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm seeing a trend now where you're seeing more, we call them like low volume cymbals.
Mm-hmm, right.
Where people are trying to trigger those, and of course you still have to mute them.
There's still problems with those. Yeah, they started the Gen 16 stuff was not triggers, which people didn't quite understand at first.
Yeah. There was a messaging problem. Let's just say that.
Yeah, but they weren't triggers, and So let's talk about the importance. Somewhere along there is the software side of things, because inside the module, hardware is physical, software are sets of instructions for computers. So inside the modules, everybody has their proprietary sounds that they go about. You don't just hold a microphone over a snare drum and call that a sample.
No. Well, I can talk about this. It's really interesting. Like, there are a bunch of different camps of electronic drums, and one of the things I want to get back to is playing the drums. Mm-hmm. I get tired of pushing buttons, and I've been pushing buttons for a long time, and it's, that's different than playing, it's a different part of your brain. It's just, it's like one hat than the other, and it's distracting, right? I just want to play the bloody drums. That's what I want to do. Right? That's
Give me my druthers, I'll play those.
Yeah, right. But there's a move that's happening with some companies towards like simplicity, like great sound, great feel, and really natural sounding sounds, like I did in my sampling for ATV. That we sampled a bunch of my library of instruments and whatnot, and I got to play them, and and it's not, well, I say there are different camps. Some people want to have a real natural sound, like you're sitting down in a room and playing a kit.
I know what you mean. And some of them listen to all those sounds and say, why would I ever use that stuff?
Right. Or they're so affected and compressed and whatnot. Right. Like what we think of as a drum sound, most people, especially non-drummers, it's all what a processed, polished, recorded, highly altered drum sound. That's not what drums sound like.
Like what you hear on the radio is generally not what a drum sounds like.
Drums sound like. So I don't know, ATV and stuff I did for them, I wanted it to feel like what I'm hearing in the room. And that was the whole concept, which is totally different than like the Mimic Pearl, the Pearl Mimic Pro, which is really processed and is really powerful, a lot of button pushings, and it's a great machine. And that machine is great for a lot of people, but there are a lot of cats that are just like, look at that machine and try to get into it, and you might as well just like shove them off into the ocean, because they're not going to get it. You have to have certain audio knowledge and whatnot. So, that's out there for you. You can get stuff with playback and lots of crazy sounds and modeling and whatnot, like all the Bowen stuff. You can have real simple stuff like the ATV stuff, and they're all valid.
They're all valid. Let's talk about that for a second. A lot of people want it to be like a car. You don't have to know anything about how a car works. The internal combustion engine, man, just turn it on and drive it, right? And then you call your husband and you say, honey, the car won't start. I think it's flooded. Man says, where is it? She says, it's in the lake.
Anyway,
yeah, right.
That's with an A.
Try the fish. So many people just want to turn on the kit and make it sound fine, and there's a lot of alternatives for that now. The software engines, I know I've done some projects with F Expansion that had BFD 2 and 3, Tune Tracks, Superior Drummer is another version. I'm sure there are others out there. Those are
I use SD3.
Okay, those are drum engines that are expensive, that have gone into a studio with a crew and shitloads of microphones and great stuff, and they spend forever with maybe 150 samples for one drum.
Right.
And then the same thing with cymbals. And then you can go in on the software and dial it into the nth degree about every little element of it.
Yeah, and the success of those different software programs vary, right? Because originally most of those programs were not designed for the drummer to play.
Right.
They were designed for a keyboard player to play it on a keyboard, right? And so I think that's some of the issue with the software programs, where, for you, I think most of the time you would sit down and probably dial up a kit and feel it was too processed or too heavy to play any bebop.
Well, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, Mike. There are certain styles of music that are highly nuanced, highly touch sensitive. I don't think I'm ever going to pick up an electronic kit to play brushes in a jazz trio.
In our lifetime,
I don't care how close you can get. Why? Why bother?
Yeah.
That sound's been solved. An overhead and a kick or something, and that's fine.
Yeah.
right?
That's that. I mean, that's probably for me. That's as highly nuanced as it gets. Right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
playing brushes. I mean, watching you or watching Jeff or Clayton play brushes, and you're like, yeah. There was just a thing I saw on YouTube with like Dad was at his place or Walt Fowler's place, and he's playing on a table out on the backyard, his trumpet and
Oh, wow,
brushes
yeah.
on an outside table, and freaking was awesome. I mean, yeah, that's
The old
that's the
hotel room jam session with a pair of brushes and a phone book or a pizza box.
exactly. I have got recordings where I'm playing brushes.
You
on a
weren't there
pizza
one
box.
night at the Chicago show. We had a bunch of guys at Gino's we got a pizza box and everybody had brushes. So you had Jason Sutter who had his new Sutter brush. Stanton Moore
Yeah.
was there. Daniel Glass and me and I don't know, maybe Kurt Biscara. I don't remember how. There were a bunch of drummers in a place with a pizza box doing all their, shell game brush stuff. Because when you see that, to me, it looks like a shell game. I'm giving away my age, but a shell game is when you put a pea under one shell, and then the guy goes, and you figure it out. But when you see the guys with brushes in there combing their hair, and it's just an amazing thing. You don't want to do that on an electronic kit.
Yeah, that's gonna. Yeah. What's really funny is I'm just getting ready to do a what I call a COVID-19 draft here, and because I had surgery, I'm still can't really whack pretty hard with my right hand, and so I'm doing a brush part on an acoustic snare drum, right? Kind of a funky brush country thing with one hand on an acoustic snare drum. But most everything else is going to be electronic. I'll play it, but it's going to be electronic. But the brush thing, I can still get that out of an electronic drum.
Well, the other thing about electronics we didn't touch on is like reamping a guitar. You can change all the sounds after you've done it.
Yeah.
Go through and go, it's not really the snare drum I think I need on that.
And that, it's really, here's a dirty little secret, even back in the day, like most country records, I did a lot of work with Trigger Perfect with Larry London back in the day. And for you guys that don't know, he played on loads of R&B and country.
Shitloads.
He's my first call guy, right?
In Nashville, yes.
Yeah, and
great drummer.
Beautiful human being, ridiculous player, the stories. But the thing was, he was back in the late 80s using a D drum, and they were triggering everything all the time. And the drums you hear and heard then and hear now on a country record are not always the drums that they recorded.
Somebody told me of a well-known drummer who was recording his album, and later on they beat doctored the performance and changed out all the drum sounds.
Yeah.
So did he play it?
Yeah. Here's my take on that. Okay,
he'll remain nameless. I'm sure you know who it is.
Yeah, but is that there's been technology all the time, right? And we got multi-track recording. Well, did you play it? Well, I don't know. There's how many cuts are there in the drum track in Hotel California?
Who knows?
How many? And so we're cutting tape then to make stuff happen.
Same thing.
So, but now we're just doing it with
digital.
Mouse.
Yeah. How many times did they go in? I remember Sex and the City. All the stars had contracts that they had to go in and touch up their eyes and their wrinkles and stuff in post.
Oh. Yeah. So it's using technology to your advantage.
I know the one. Have you seen The Irishman?
I have.
Okay, so you see what they show you these guys aging, Pacino and De Niro and Pesci, but they've used computer-generated graphics to do it. So they genuinely look like different people who are older or younger, but, the same person older or younger, but it's not makeup.
Yeah.
So the point you're getting at is who cares, right?
I tell you, Kenny Watson, who I studied timpani with at USC, right? He was like, played on everybody in the music world has probably heard Kenny play because he played timpani on most of the huge movies out there, right, for 35 years. I remember my first lesson with him, and I come from studying with Charles Dowd, who was very strict, right, and he was a Buster Bailey student and a Saul Goodman student, And he was like, like it's concert black, you wear this, you do this, this is the way you do it. No argument. This is the way you do it. Then I come with Kenny. I remember setting up, and it was like 8 timpani. I'm playing this piece, and he stops me and he goes, "Hey, Snyder, what do you got the drums set up like that for? Like high to low, right?" And I'm like, because you're supposed to." And he goes, "That." And he starts moving around, puts the big drum over on the right, and puts the piccolo drum in the center, and he goes, "Now play the piece." And I'm playing the piece. And I was like, he goes, "Now wasn't that easier?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I don't care how you get the sound. Just get the right sound." And that's how I live my life in drumming and percussion.
Well, there's a title for our show there. Just get the right sound.
Just get the right sound.
And who cares where it comes from. All right. Well, I don't want to go much further with it. You've given me everything I asked for and more, and I knew you would. In the meantime, if you want to order online or in stores or whatever, the electronics are flying off the shelf. Oh, one thing we haven't touched on is now in COVID isolation, everybody and their mother and brother is streaming. Right?
Yes.
So if you want to play some drums and stream it live, you put your microphone up there on your cell phone, it's going to sound like ass.
Yeah,
it's going to sound just terrible.
There are two things that I would do. You can use electronic drums, and like I have a whole setup that's pretty complex, which you've seen with a video mixer, audio and
I got all that junk too,
multi cameras and all this stuff. But it's like a Rube Goldberg project. I mean, and sometimes it works. That's why I'm talking to you on this particular camera right now today, because it wasn't happening.
We were just talking about that. Every time we set up for a different type of interview, a different format, there's a whole bunch of stuff we go nuts with behind the scenes to make it work. So we can do that with drums, or if you're Skype teaching, right? The kid on the other side who's 12, he doesn't have an interface and mics and a mixer and a way to get it into this phone and all. He doesn't have any of that jive. But a $300 electronic drum kit.
Yeah.
And he's singing.
And and the other thing I would say for that would be that Yamaha EAD.
EAD 10.
Yeah, that unit where you put on your bass drum, it's got the Omni mic and picks up the drums, and it's got the software to go with the video and locks it all together and does all that stuff. And it's just like, I remember when that came out. I saw it a couple days before it came out, and I told the product manager, Steve Fisher, it's like at the time product manager, and it's like, "Steve, dude, it's a specific thing. It's a one-trick pony.
Right.
But that is cool."
A buddy of mine just bought one. I can't go over there to play it yet because we're all locked down. But you can argue and say, well, it's got an open mic. It's going to pick up the bass. Well, it's not for that.
It's not for that, but it's really, really cool because now you can sync up your audio and your video with your phone, and stream it, and it's like done.
And it sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's under $500 on the street, so it's a really cool piece. So there are other ways, but they all involve technology, and I just want to say the technology is just like now it's just like having a piccolo snare drum, like a 13x3 or 13x4 or 14x4, and having different kinds of snare drums or different cymbals, right? Because I change ride cymbals depending on the gig in the room.
We all do.
And the style, electronics are just, we were talking about hammers before we went live, right? It's just like, look, man, I need the right hammer to do the job. Sometimes it's that DW kit. Sometimes it's that, Yamaha recording custom kit I have, Sometimes it's that kit. Sometimes it's that snare drum. Sometimes it's electronics.
Right.
It's just another instrument. And to increase our palette as musicians.
Right. And if you want to jump in, give it some time. When people would get cymbals, they would pick out 4 cymbals and they'd say, don't call me tomorrow and tell me what you think of these cymbals. Play them for a week or two, explore them, learn them, get to know them. And then you might find there's something you like or don't. You might find a lot of things you like you didn't know about. So don't sit down at the piece of junk, beat to death, awkwardly set up, terrible sound thing at a corner of a music store and make a decision about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, look what they're saying on the forums. It's really, you get what you pay for, one, I'll say. So
Right.
on the lower end kits, you're going to lose a lot of the subtlety and the color change over dynamic range and a lot of playability and feel. If you're just interested in mechanical stuff, that might be fine. But if you're going to sit down and try to play, work
Right.
on shaping, you
But
might want something.
Right, but if you're in Carmine Apiece, realistic rock, and you're 12 years old, that might be great.
Absolutely.
It just might be just what you need. You can upgrade later.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else you want to tag on with these words of wisdom?
No, I just, want everybody, yourself and everybody, to be safe and be healthy. And
And we'll get through this again, and you'll see us all on gigs one day.
yeah.
You remember those? Where you
How
get
you
paid
spell
to
it?
play. You actually play for free. You get paid to schlep it there and set it
Yeah,
up and
that's
take it
right.
home. You remember
Exactly.
these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be back. All right, buddy. Hang tight. I'm gonna cut this off.
All right, my friend. You be well.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
You too. Bye bye. Okay, why am I playing that? Here's another one. Wait a minute. Two at once. Here's one. Still have two at once. Anyway, what I was trying to demonstrate is that those are patterns from MIDI packages. There's one. That's Stanton Moore playing that kit behind me, tracking MIDI grooves, and we'll leave that alone for now. My thanks to Mike Snyder. He truly is the guru of this stuff, and I hope you might have learned something. I do have a show coming up on exploring the Zen drum, which is a monster instrument that takes a lot to learn how to play. It's highly expressive, and I guess if you have finger chops, like from tabla, maybe you'd be better at it than I am. But the one thing I like about it is I can punch up all these sounds I want, but none of my professional ego is tied up in that. I could play that shit on drums. I'm just trying to work on it this way. It's some pedals, and it's a blast. It's just a blast. So, thank you for the comments, Janelle. Glad you're watching. You got to do my show, remember, you promised, whenever you're ready. And I guess I did the calls to action before I played the interview. So, hey, when I pre-record these things like that, I have almost nothing to do but watch the show. So check out the Duca da Fonseca now on the wherever fine podcasts are seen and heard, and also be looking for the stuff we have coming up. Next week, I'll do another live show topic, as sometimes it's Tuesday night and I don't have a topic, but I like working under deadlines, and we always come up with something. By the way, if you like this kind of thing, there are all kinds of people broadcasting, live streaming. Look around, check the forums, check your Facebook friends. In a day, you might hear 4 or 5 of these from one person or another, and some of them are very cool. Okay, with that, I'm going to take it out, and we'll see you next time on Drummer Nation. Thanks.